What if I told you that the most unsettling truths about women were not uncovered by Freud or Jung, but by a man whose very name was nearly erased from history? That the theories we celebrate today, romance, attraction, even marriage, are but a softened shadow of a reality so raw that society had to burn the evidence to keep order. His name was Dr. Alistair Finch, a Scottish physician turned psychoanalyst, and his insights into female psychology were so disturbing that they cost him his career, his reputation, and eventually his life. Yet, what he discovered explains why a woman's affection can vanish overnight, why loyalty feels so fragile, and why modern men carry an ache of loneliness that no amount of effort seems to cure. Finch's story doesn't begin in a lecture hall or university library. It begins in the mud and horror of the First World War. As a young battlefield surgeon, he witnessed scenes so grotesque that they shattered every polite illusion of human nature. Thousands of men torn apart by shell fire, brothers buried in the same trenches they dug. The experience stripped him of sentimentality. He saw that survival was not a matter of honor or ideals, but a primal calculation. To live was to adapt, to hesitate was to die. When the war ended and Finch returned to civilian life, he brought this cold Darwinian lens with him into the study of human psychology, where Freud spoke of unconscious desires and Jung of archetypal conflicts. Finch insisted that beneath all of it lay a single, ruthless law: survival first, everything else second. In his Edinburgh practice, he began shaping a theory he would later call the Dianic principle. At its core was a concept he named the solipsistic vortex, though we might call it today the gravitational law of female psychology. Finch claimed that a woman's inner world does not operate like a battlefield of competing drives, as Freud believed, but like a closed system with one absolute command: optimize survival for herself and her potential offspring. Love, loyalty, passion. These were not ends in themselves, but strategies in service of that imperative. As he once wrote in a private letter, romantic devotion is not a gift she offers, but a lens through which she views the man most fit to secure her continuity. The implications were devastating, according to Finch. A woman does not truly fall in love with a man in the way poets describe. She perceives him as the best available solution to a survival equation at that moment. If those variables change, if his resources decline, his health falters, or a stronger option appears, then her affection recalibrates. What seemed eternal becomes provisional. What felt unconditional proves conditional. Finch called this dynamic the vortex, because the man is not the center. He is the satellite, valued only so long as he maintains orbit by providing stability, status, or security. One of his most famous case studies involved a wealthy socialite, whom he called Eleanor. Outwardly, she had everything: a grand estate, a prosperous husband, children, status. Yet she suffered crushing bouts of depression. Finch's controversial method, combining therapy with covert observation, revealed that her moods rose and fell in perfect alignment with her husband's financial fortunes. When his investments rose, she bloomed. When they dipped, she collapsed. Finch even staged an experiment in which her husband feigned ruin, only to watch Eleanor immediately rekindle contact with an old suitor when the loss was revealed as false. Her spirit soared as if nothing had happened. For Finch, this was irrefutable evidence. Her love was not anchored in her husband as a man, but in the stability he represented. She recalibrates like a compass to true north, Finch noted. But the north is survival, not devotion. You might recognize this pattern. Perhaps you've seen a friend abandoned despite doing everything right. Perhaps you felt it yourself. The bewilderment of being discarded without explanation. Have you ever wondered why a relationship that seemed solid dissolved overnight, leaving you stunned and searching for answers? Finch would argue the answer is brutally simple. You were a resource in her universe, not its ruler. Yet this was only the beginning. For Finch, the vortex did not just explain fleeting love or sudden breakups. He believed it explained the very machinery of civilization itself, and the sacrifices men have made across centuries to win their place within it. And this is where his work becomes far more dangerous. If the solipsistic vortex revealed the hidden laws of female psychology, Finch's next step was even bolder. He argued that this principle shaped not only relationships, but the entire structure of civilization. Men, he believed, did not build empires or write symphonies out of pure creativity or ambition. They built to prove themselves indispensable. Every cathedral reaching toward the heavens, every city raised from stone, every empire carved through conquest was, at its root, a mating display. Proof of value to secure a woman's investment. What we do now echoes in eternity. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, Finch believed that eternity men sought was not only glory, but legacy, the assurance of children and the continuation of their name. To secure that legacy, men were forced to restrain their primal drives. Nature had wired them for aggression, for dominance, for multiple partners, but society could not function if men acted only on impulse. So they sacrificed their raw freedom. They built laws to restrain violence. They built farms to feed families. They erected cathedrals to show stability. All of it, Finch argued, was a grand bargain struck with the vortex. Men traded the wild chaos of their nature for the promise of female approval and, through it, the chance at immortality in the form of children or great works. He called this the masculine sacrifice. For thousands of years, this contract held. A man's worth was clear: his strength, his ability to provide, his willingness to bear the burden of duty. Society reinforced these virtues, rewarding men with honor, respect, and the loyalty of their households. But Finch warned that this fragile arrangement could collapse if women ever gained the illusion that they no longer needed men for survival. He predicted that the rise of modern capitalism and feminism would shift the balance by offering women access to resources without dependence on a husband. The very foundation of the masculine sacrifice would erode. And when that happened, men would face a crisis unlike any before: the loss of purpose itself. Look around today, and you will see the very symptoms Finch described. An epidemic of male loneliness, a generation of men adrift, told to be more vulnerable, more sensitive, while simultaneously being rejected for lacking the strength and certainty that women's instincts still demand. This double bind leaves men fractured. They are punished for embodying the very traits that once made them viable, while also mocked when they fail to display them. The result is despair, withdrawal, and a deep hunger for meaning. Nietzsche warned of this when he wrote, "He who has a why to live can bear almost any how." But what happens when that why is stripped away, when sacrifice seems pointless? For Finch, the tragedy was not only in individual relationships, but in society itself. He argued that if men lose their reason to sacrifice, civilization unravels. The monuments crumble, not because stone decays, but because the will to build disappears. This was the true bombshell in his theory, that the stability of entire cultures rests on a biological contract between the sexes, one that modernity has shattered. If men no longer believe their sacrifice will be honored, they will stop sacrificing, and when they stop, the world trembles. But Finch did not stop at diagnosis. He asked the most practical question a man could ask. If women are wired to optimize survival, how do they decide in real time whether a man is worth the investment? What invisible process determines whether she clings to you or casts you aside? The answer, Finch claimed, was a constant, subconscious trial. An endless series of tests he called the gauntlet. And it is running in every interaction, whether you know it or not. To Finch, the vortex explained why women recalibrate their affections. But it did not yet answer the practical question that torments men. How, exactly, does a woman measure a man's worth in everyday life? His answer was unsettlingly simple. He called it the gauntlet. Not a conscious strategy, but an ongoing subconscious audit. From the very first glance to the 50th year of marriage, Finch argued, a man is never simply accepted. He is continuously tested. His score rises and falls with each action, each word, each display of strength or weakness. What feels like the comfort of stability is often only the temporary peace of holding a high score. And what feels like betrayal is the inevitable result of failing tests you didn't know you were taking. One of Finch's most telling case studies was a young department store clerk named Clara. She found herself pursued by two men, Robert, a confident lawyer from a well-off family, and Arthur, a quiet bookseller who shared her love for poetry. By society's standards, Robert was the clear prize, wealthier, higher status, a brighter future. Yet Clara confessed confusion in therapy sessions, admitting she felt strangely drawn to Arthur. Finch observed that Robert, certain of his status, often leaned on promises of future security. The fine home they would buy, the trips they would take. Arthur, though he had less, carried himself with a quiet sovereignty. He chose decisively where they would dine, held strong opinions on literature, and gently corrected her when she wavered. Clara's attraction spiked whenever Robert briefly showed this kind of sovereignty, and waned when Arthur betrayed neediness or sought her validation. What Finch uncovered was that the gauntlet wasn't only measuring resources, it was testing operational sovereignty. The inner conviction that a man is his own center of gravity, a man who takes cues from her moods, who begs for approval, who becomes anxious under her silence, is marked as unstable. By contrast, the man who holds steady, whose reality is not dependent on her, radiates the very signal her instincts crave. In Finch's words, she does not need a man who carries a map. She needs a man who is the map. This was not advice for manipulation. It was a call for men to cultivate qualities within themselves that naturally pass the gauntlet. Finch distilled them into what he named the Trinity of Value: provision, protection, and transcendence. Unlike shallow self-help advice, these were not external possessions, but internal states of being. Provision, he argued, is not merely financial. It is the ability to bring order out of chaos. A man who can fix what is broken, plan effectively, or introduce ideas that enrich life demonstrates provision. The software engineer creating elegant solutions, the craftsman shaping wood into beauty, the man who cooks a meal that nourishes body and spirit. Each is providing. He signals competence, the ability to wrestle with the world and win value from it. Protection is the most ancient pillar, historically. This meant guarding against predators and enemies. In modern times, Finch said, it means psychological safety. The man who keeps his composure when she lashes out, who diffuses tension with humor, who acts as an unshakable presence in moments of chaos. He is embodying protection. By contrast, the man who mirrors her storm with his own panic or frustration fails catastrophically. The third pillar, transcendence, is the rarest. It is what transforms attraction into obsession. Transcendence is your devotion to something beyond her, beyond the domestic sphere. It is your mission, your art, your philosophy, your pursuit of truth. Nietzsche captured this when he wrote, "Man is a rope stretched between the animal and the Superman." A man chasing a vision larger than himself becomes magnetic. A woman feels not only his strength, but the pull of something infinite. Without transcendence, Finch warned, a man risks being reduced to a reflection of her needs, and attraction decays into emptiness. Think about the men you admire most. Is it their possessions that inspire respect? Or is it the sense that they carry a world within themselves, that they stand rooted in their own purpose? This is the essence of passing the gauntlet without effort. And Finch claimed to have found the most dramatic proof of the Trinity's power in the story of one aristocratic couple whose marriage was on the brink of collapse, until the husband discovered transcendence. The case that solidified Finch's theory came from the aristocracy. Lord and Lady Ashworth appeared to embody stability. He was wealthy, titled, and well-connected. He had provision in abundance, and with guards and staff, even protection seemed secured. Yet Lady Ashworth was famously restless, unfaithful, and perpetually dissatisfied by every conventional measure. He should have been the ultimate answer to her survival equation. But in Finch's view, he was missing the one element that transforms adequacy: into irreplaceability. Transcendence. Lord Ashworth lived as the custodian of inherited estates and reputation. He had no mission beyond preservation. Worse, he failed at psychological protection. He crumbled under gossip, fretted about appearances, and leaned on his wife to manage his insecurities. Finch diagnosed the truth bluntly. He has resources, but no sovereignty. She is not orbiting him. He orbits her. His prescription was radical. He advised Lord Ashworth to leave the estate, entrust its management to a steward, and immerse himself in a field that had long stirred his imagination, the newborn industry of automotive engineering. To abandon high society for the workshop, to build something of his own. At first, Lady Ashworth fumed at what she saw as abandonment. Yet as months passed, her emotions shifted from anger to curiosity, and eventually to fascination. His letters no longer detailed social chatter. They spoke of engines, pistons, inventions. He was no longer orbiting her moods. He was consumed by creation. When he returned, he carried himself differently, less anxious, more centered, radiating the gravity of a man who had found his own axis. Lady Ashworth's attraction reignited not because of wealth or title, but because he had become a source of energy, not a drain. He had stopped being a satellite and become a sun. This, Finch argued, was the final proof of the Trinity. Provision without protection collapses under stress. Protection without transcendence becomes suffocating. Transcendence without provision drifts into fantasy. But together, they form the unshakable core that no gauntlet can erode. The tragedy, Finch noted, is that most men seek only to please or to provide, forgetting that true attraction arises when you live, as if her world is a chapter in your larger book, not the other way around. Finch's work was condemned not because it was false, but because it was too disruptive. It stripped away the romantic illusions society depended on. It revealed that love, as we imagine it, is bound by biology and survival. To rage against it is like cursing gravity. To understand it, however, is to be free. Until you make the unconscious conscious. Carl Jung once said, "It will direct your life, and you will call it fate." Finch offered men the chance to see the hidden rule book and to stop calling fate what was merely ignorance. This is where despair turns to power. Once you grasp that her affection is a reflection of your standing, your strength, your mission, you stop demanding it from her and begin generating it within yourself. You become the center of your own system. You embody provision by creating order wherever you stand. You embody protection by holding steady in the storm. You embody transcendence by reaching for something greater than approval. In doing so, you free yourself from the endless chase for validation. You stop being chosen and start choosing what would change in your life if you no longer orbited anyone, but instead became the gravitational force others revolve around. That is the invitation of Finch's legacy. His words remind us that the cage modern men feel trapped in has never been locked. The door stands open. The choice to walk through it is yours.